Hello, my name is Lawrence Robinson. I'm a medical doctor, born and raised in Philadelphia. Grew up in West Philadelphia, went to Overbrook High School. When I was in high school and during that time, I became involved with a program called AFNA. AFNA was headed by a man named Samuel Evans, well known here in Philadelphia. And he had a program that introduced youth from the community to various programs in medicine and law. I became part of that program and joined the medical aspect of that program. Through his tutelage and guidance, I was able to graduate from high school and go to Harvard University, where I got my bachelor's degree. After finishing my bachelor's degree, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, where I did my medical degree and became a medical doctor. Completing my degree in medicine, I went on to do a residency. The first year of that residency was done in Chicago at Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's. From there, I went to Johns Hopkins to do my residency and my master's of public health. After leaving there, I went to Harlem Hospital, which was under the direction of Columbia Presbyterian. And I got a position as an assistant professor of medicine at Columbia University, and I was the director of the hypertension program. From there, I was hanging out in New York, having a wonderful time there, being a professor. But it was actually my parents who decided that they wanted me to come back to Philadelphia to help them because they were getting older. And they were the ones who put my name in to become the commissioner of public health for Philadelphia. And I managed to get the position as deputy health commissioner. And that's how I ended up here in Philadelphia. I occupied that position for about 16 years. And now I want to do some of the things that Mr. Evans said. So he used to tell me, he would say, Dr. Robinson, he said, Robbie, that's actually the term that he used. Why are you sitting here with all of this information that you have acquired and it's locked up in your head? He says, you should be out sharing this information. And that's why I came up with the ideal of the insightful journal. It'll be a mechanism for me to get some of the thoughts that I have been acquiring over these years to you, the listeners, so that you can learn from my experiences and from the knowledge that I've acquired. Welcome to the Insightful Journal. Today, we have a very special treat for the people who are tuned in. We have my good friend and my former colleague, Dr. Walter Hsu. He's just returned from a trip to Cuba, and he's going to tell us all about the experience that he had in Cuba and about the wonderful things that they're doing with their healthcare system. As always, we like to start our program to just remind you that disparities in health are among the most egregious issues that we have to deal with. Dr. Hsu, welcome. Welcome to the Insightful Journal. I'd
Wow,
like
Lawrence,
to,
so great to see you. Frankly, it's just great to catch up.
yeah, it's so wonderful. Now, I have never been to Cuba myself, but I did do a little research on Cuba, and I looked it up, and it's a very remarkable place. It's has a very high literacy rate. The ratio of doctors to population is one of the highest in the world. I also found out that they were innovators in research. And one of the things that I found, which I didn't know that they invented the hepatitis B vaccine and meningitis treatments, and also they have a vaccine for lung cancer. which is a major problem here. I've never even heard about a vaccine for lung cancer. So it's really very interesting. They also have been the doctors who are sent to third world countries or places when there's an epidemic or outbreak or anyway and people need health. The Cuban doctors are known around the world as being able to provide emergency assistance to people. So, Dr. Su, tell me a little bit about why you went to Cuba and some of your memorable moments.
Well, it's just a wonderful experience. I want to say right from the start that Cuba is a country that's somewhat mysterious to most Americans. We only hear a lot of propaganda about sort of this dictatorship that was under the Castro government. Castro, both Raul and Fidel have both passed away. And there's a new leadership now. It's still a communist country, but it is a country that I think has invested its meager resources into health and education. They have made that a priority. And I think the interesting result is that they are a very literate and learned population. There are very many talented doctors, nurses, and other health professionals, as well as artists and musicians. I mean, many of us old enough remember the Buena Vista Club, which is one of the great musical groups. And Cuban music is actually one of the more interesting genres of music around the world. So they are actually a very gifted and talented group of individuals, people, and they suffer under this false impression that Americans have that Cuba is a terrorist country and that they're going to attack us any moment. And that's just not my experience at all from visiting there. I thought the people there were extremely friendly and actually in desperate conditions because of, I don't know if people realize, but there's an embargo that we have in the United States that prevents us from doing any trade with Cuba. So the only way you can visit Cuba is if it's under an educational mission, which is what we did. We had a group of 8 of us who actually took a medical trip to Cuba to visit the Cuban healthcare system. And I could go into more details about it, but it was a really eye-opening experience. So it's a much more integrated program. It's, our program in America, we have to have all these referrals and prior authorizations for high-tech services, and you have to get the insurance permission. And none of that really, because it's all funded by the Cuban government. A lot of the bureaucracy that we have to fund in America is instead being used to actually fund direct specialty services. And I think it makes a lot more sense. Part of the reason why their healthcare system is much more affordable is because the salaries are abysmal. I mean, by our standards, we would never tolerate them. I think the average primary care doctor makes less than $1,000 a year. So we're talking about, a monthly income of like $75, $90 a month, which simply is laughable. The cab drivers in Havana can make more money than some of the doctors in Havana. And that sort of speaks to another issue, which is why would a doctor tolerate getting paid so little? And still, the fact is that they can get all these doctors who are willing to work in these neighborhoods and polyclinics. Well, I think it's partly because they are really driven by the mission of healthcare, that they believe in their patients. They understand the vital role that they play in the lives of their patients. And they do it, not for the money, but really for the joy and satisfaction of getting patients better and helping them improve their healthcare. So in a very different way from most doctors in America, I hate to say this, they are really motivated not by the money, but the true spirit of what medicine and healthcare should be. Because the money really is not there for these doctors. They should go out and be cab drivers if they wanted to make more money. But they do it because they truly, I think, believe in the larger mission of taking care of patients.
Now, one of the things that I was reading about when I did my research for this program, they told me that the emphasis on their healthcare model was prevention. And Dr. C, you know, because you worked with me at the health department. In fact, we had I was in charge of that department, the department that was doing health promotion and chronic disease prevention. That's certainly an area that's overlooked. I would say overlooked here in America. But here you have a system where the basic and primary focus of the healthcare system is on prevention. And that means keeping people well, having a wellness model, not a disease model. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what you saw from that vein?
Yeah, that is such an important point, Lawrence, because if you're going to pay all the bills in your healthcare system, then what Cuba and any other organized healthcare system realizes, it is far cheaper to prevent illnesses than to end up paying for the treatment costs. Our healthcare system is all on the tertiary care end of healthcare. That is to say, it's very hospital based. We look to our hospitals to be the leaders in our healthcare system, whereas in Cuba, they look to their primary care doctors to be the leaders of their healthcare system, because they realize that if they can get kids immunized, if they can make sure the kids have well baby checks and are getting proper nutrition, if they make those investments up front for prevention and healthy nutrition, then they can avoid the long-term consequences of, let's say, poor diet, obesity, diabetes out of control, all these high blood pressure, all these things that are plaguing much of our own healthcare system. And as a result, they save in the long run a lot more money. So yes, I think by having this huge investment in primary care that they've made in Cuba, they actually can really not only talk about prevention, but they actually can implement it in a way that we can only dream about in America.
Welcome to the Insightful Journal. I'm Dr. Lawrence Robinson, and today we have a very special guest. We have the brother of Marvin Gaye, who's going to be talking about a book that he wrote called When a Man Exhales, a memoir from the brother of Marvin Gaye. Welcome to the Insightful Journal. I read your book. I went on Kindle and I downloaded it, and I think I got through the first chapter. I read the introduction and so forth. A very interesting read. There are many similarities between your book and what I do. I'm a addiction psychiatrist. And what I do is I specialize in people who are addicted to drugs. Mostly these days it's opiates. And I have a license to prescribe Suboxone or buprenorphine, which is a drug that many people use in order to avoid having an overdose or having withdrawal symptoms from the opioid. So I could mostly understand, what you were talking about. My background, of course, is a lot different than yours. But I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation, because what we are really looking at is we're looking at your search for purpose and understanding. And hopefully we'll come out of this with the hope and the how you change, your transformation. And I think that
Yes.
our readers are going to know this, and they want to know about this. So please
Yeah.
just tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, your relationship with Marvin Gaye, and how you came up with the idea or the thought of writing this book.
Thank you. First, thank you for having me, and it's a blessing to be here. I am Antoine Gay. I am the brother of Marvin Gaye, and we had the same father, Marvin Gaye Sr. And anyone knows a little bit of the story of how Marvin left this earth tragically. It was through and by the hands of our father. And so I am so my book, When a Man Exhales, it touches on what it was like being a family secret, touch on meeting my father and the differences and similarities of my father and Marvin, and what it was like being a black male in America, trying to figure out who I am, dealing with again the traumas that were happening to me at an early age, and how I just dealt with trying to find out who I was and the different things that happened to me along the way, as other traumas and hurts and pains that happened to me as I went into adulthood. But I'm a minister. I'm a former law enforcement officer, correctional officer, therapeutic mentor, probation officer, basketball coach, trainer. I've been working with at-risk youth and adults most of my life. So part of the book was to write my story in hopes to help others who have dealt with some type of trauma, pain, rejection, all the things that can come at us and make us feel like giving up and losing hope. And hopefully that someone would be encouraged and know that God can write a new chapter in our life. And of course, I dealt with addiction that I didn't see coming, and how that impacted my life, my marriage, my children, and ministry. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's a story that we hear, often, and many times when we're in a situation where we can't cope with the situation, we look for a crutch or we look for something. And unfortunately, because people don't have other supports, maybe family structures, God, the church, whatever it is, they turn to drugs in order to get that. And it gives you a short term feeling, but the problem is it's not really the solution to your problem. And what happens is after a while, then it becomes your problem and it doesn't become your solution. I had a good friend once, a man named Sam Evans, and he told me, he said, the secret to controlling your life is very simple. He says, everybody has problems, it has difficulties in their life, but the secret is to keep from multiplying them. So
Mm,
if you have one problem, don't make another problem out of it. And many
yes. Yeah.
times when we try to address the problems that we have, we create new problems. We multiply our
Yes.
problems. That's where you
Yes.
have a problem because there's no way you're going to avoid having problems. That's part of life.
That's right.
You're going to have your ups,
Right.
you're going to have your downs, you're going to have your loves, you're going to have your disappointments, you're going to have your betrayals. That's part of our life. Okay,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's the human condition.
No,
But we
absolutely.
have to be strong enough and to deal with our issues and not to change them so that they become multiple issues. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think that that's one of the things that we can learn, from this. And it's
Yeah.
very simple, We have to deal with what it is that we have. We can't be in a state where we deny it or, say, oh, well, I'm going to bury my head or I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to just go and get high and, I'll worry about that tomorrow. We got to
Yeah.
get actively involved in terms of dealing with it. One of the things I say as a psychiatrist as well is that, mental illness is one of the greatest health problems that we have here in America. And I actually have related it to violence as well. Right here in Philadelphia now, we're having a major violence epidemic. I think just the last weekend we had maybe 10 people shot or something like that in just one
Mm.
day. The numbers are huge. And so what we've said is that violence is a public health issue. Okay,
Yes, it
it's
is.
not a criminal justice issue. You could have as many
That's right.
police, you could have as many
Yep.
courts, you could have as many judges. That's not the problem. It's a mental health problem. You know, and it's a disease. It's a disease just like cancer, heart disease, whatever. It's a disease. Okay, and if we're going to be effective in dealing with it, we have to approach it from that standpoint. One of
Gotcha.
the things about our criminal justice system is that it's a punishment based system. It's just like our medical system, it's a
Yeah.
disease system. So we don't even interface with people until they become diseased or have illness. But
Mhm.
we have to change that system so that we deal with that. So I know that you have taken some strategies. I'd like to hear about some of the strategies that you took in order to deal with the issues that you were going through.
Well, one thing is for sure is being a Christian, being raised in a Christian household, and then having a personal relationship with the Lord myself, as far as um, my faith. My faith, and you can hear it a lot of times, even in the testimonies in religious circles of gospel singers and pastors, and testimonies of people that if it wasn't for God, I would have lost my mind. And so it is truly faith, and the church has been that which has helped me. Uh, my faith in the Lord, and reading the scriptures, and actually reading and seeing that biblical characters in the Bible, prophets dealt with depression. They dealt with it shows the pain of loss. David's throughout the Psalms shares about he's crying out to God, and drown his pillow with tears. And so, yeah, it's my faith has been first and foremost that which has kept me, and then the nurturing of loving people in my life. I come from a huggy, encouraging family, so that has always helped me. Um, Having positive role models, men role models such as coaches, even if they weren't the most spiritual, they were grounded in loving discipline. Uh, I remember there was also a school teacher in sixth grade, right during the time of either before, might have been before the tragedy happened with my brother and my father. He invited me to his house, and that's the first time I ever had spaghetti. But the teacher was showing love, and he didn't know I was being picked on in my neighborhood. He didn't know that my mother at the time was dealing with mental health issues. And so my faith, nurturing family members, and then persons outside of the family who showed me love, helped me early on, and actually helped me even going forth, to some degree of knowing, being touched by that love early on. Um, uh, it was a lot of reserve that went forth when I went into adulthood from the love that was shown to me early on.
Welcome to the Insightful Journal. Today we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Doreen Davis. She will be discussing natural remedies for spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being. As you know, the Insightful Journal is concerned with the issues of health disparities. And we recognize that disparities in health are the most egregious of violations we have of our human rights. So we are trying to bring the knowledge that's needed to live a more fruitful and helpful life. Thank you so much, Dr. Davis. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I noticed that you had a degree in social work and also you have a PhD, but I'm not sure what that is. So just tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm a by education a social worker. By and I focus on the area of services. So my area of expertise is services to family and children, and I am very much interested in research. I read research. I love research, so I learn a lot. I'm always on the internet. I very active in my community. I call myself a self-appointed community advocate, and that means that if I see something affecting the community of color and culture, I'm a letter writer. I'm a real letter writer. So, but I'm really interested. The bottom line is, I'm interested in people and what, if anything, I can contribute to the well-being of us all.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. That's sort of similar, I guess, in many ways to my background. When we were discussing you, I told the producer that I'm an allopath. So, as you know, they have the various different phases of medicine, but a lot of people don't realize it. An allopath is a plant doctor. So my training and background is in plants, and as opposed to surgery or homeopathy or some of the other areas of medicine. And think about it: all of the medicines that we use, they're derived from plants. So if it's pain, it's from an opiate, If it's aspirin, it's from a bark, If it's an antibiotic, it's a fungus, So all of the medicines that we use are plant-based medicines. Now, of course, we've redefined them, we synthesized them, we've determined what the effective dosage and all of that stuff, but underlining all of it, it's still natural remedies and medicines. So that's something that I think people should understand that.
It's funny because people are always using biblical quotes, and they're like, "Oh yes, God gave us all the medicine we need," but yet they don't call on God; they call on the doctor. Okay, and they forgot that Grandma probably had the most effective
Hmm.
and beneficial remedies that they ever had, and they never bothered. All they did was complain about, "Oh, this tastes awful." They never found out what it was that tasted so bad, but it was effective. And so I find, especially when we're talking about medicine, that you have to provide a person education, because medicine should be healing or have some healing properties. It shouldn't be something, in my thinking, that you have to take for the rest of your life once they've discovered that you have a condition that needs medication. So I find, at least in my practice, it's just educating people, because a lot of times people are taking medicinal plants in one form or another and they don't even realize it. And so they spend a lot of time, energy, money on remedies that don't work. Um, and a perfect example of that is, I saw a neighbor in the middle of the night looking for a cab to run his daughter to the emergency room. I asked him what was going on, and he said every single month that her menstrual cycle came on, she was in so much distress and pain from cramping and other symptoms that he'd have to take her to the emergency room. So I said, before you go to the emergency room, go to the corner store and get a ginger beer. And it doesn't have any alcohol in it, but it's very strong ginger. And he went to the store, got the ginger beer, came home, gave it to his daughter, and he came across the street almost in tears because it was so effective. He did not have to go to the emergency room that evening or any other evening after that to address the discomfort that his daughter experienced during her monthly cycle. And he just was amazed and just kept saying, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. All these years, all these months, all this time. And all I had to do was go to the corner and get a ginger beer.
You know, it's
You
very
know,
interesting. It's something that we all go through as we get older. So I can speak to that exactly myself. So just today, I had, well, I looked it up. They got a term for it. They called it restless leg syndrome. But basically what
okay.
it was is when I laid down at nighttime, my muscles were balling up and I had cramps and all this stuff. I said, oh my goodness, I said, what's this? And I couldn't even sleep. So
Wow.
I went and looked it up. And what it told me was that the most likely cause of this particular illness was magnesium deficiency. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
And so what it said was to get you some pumpkin seeds, which have a
Yes.
high amount of magnesium in them. Now, my sister actually understood this. Now, and she's not the doctor, I'm the doctor, but she knew better than I did. So I told my sister, I said, Lorraine, I said, I got cramps in my leg and I couldn't sleep last night. And she said, oh, I got something for you. She says, here. She says, rub this on your leg, you know, where it hurts. Do you know what it was? It was a magnesium solution. It was
Okay.
a foam, and I rubbed it on my leg, and it worked instantly because I
Instantly.
had taken the magnesium supplement, but that's going to take days for it to work. But when you rub the magnesium on the actual muscle itself, it soaks right in, and it works immediately. So I was
Yes.
able to get in here and talk to you today because of my sister. So I learned that. So that's
Look,
the
and
similar
pumpkin
thing.
seeds,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's right. So I'm very familiar with these things. I guess I'm probably unique in terms of doctors because most doctors don't know anything about natural remedies or whatever. You know, we're taught to believe in science, and unless we can have a measure and control trials and this, that, and the other, we're not really allowed to talk about things. But you're right. The remedies that my mother and family had were very effective remedies. And, you know, one of the things we talked about was my mother used to do, well, she called it spring cleaning. So
Mm-hmm.
every spring, she would make this tonic with sassafras and other barks and stuff like that. And she would say, here, drink this. You know, we
Yeah.
called it spring cleaning. And you know something, you know, all of us are up in age and healthy. So there had to be some wisdom, you know, to those remedies and stuff that the people had back in those days, you know.
Oh, sure.
You know, and I
Sure.
remember Aunt Ed Lou, she would have a jar, you know, with roots and stuff like that in it, and she would drink it, you know. So it's really
Yeah.
very interesting. And so I do believe in that. Now, there's something very special about what I notice, and I think that this is something very important for our listeners and viewers to know. And that is that you can't separate the mind from the body. So
Amen.
one of the main things that doctors do is they separate it. So you got physical medicine that deals with whatever ails you or whatever. Then you got mental health or whatever that deal with what the spiritual stuff is. But they're intimately connected. You can't separate the two
Yeah.
things, the mind
And
and the
that's
body. So
that's
please
right.
tell
And
me a
that's
little
what
bit about this because I know that's important to you.
yes, because like you say, they're connected. It's like going to buy a pair of shoes and you don't know what size you wear, or or you're not willing to try the shoes on. Okay, and you say, oh, well, the guy at the shoe store said this is the size I should probably fit, and you didn't try them on, and so you get them home, and they're not comfortable. And you say, well, why aren't they comfortable? Well, because you didn't give them a try. Okay, you didn't know enough about your feet to know the size of your foot and whether your foot was narrow or slim. You know, people are just not depending on their own knowledge and experience. They're putting the responsibility for their health in the hands of other people. And what I try to explain to people is, first of all, understand that the Hippocratic Oath does not say that you treat for free. As a matter of fact, it says that you do no harm, but you get paid. Okay. So they need to understand that there's a profit margin to healthcare in this country, okay, and around the world, but more so in this country. And to understand that their best doctor, their first doctor, is their body. So to sit down and really kind of pay attention to what's going on with your body. Okay, were you feeling fine until you drank that cup of milk or the coffee with the heavy creamer in it? That might say, hey, you might be a little lactose intolerant. So instead of going to the doctor and getting some Pepto Bismol or whatever, first stop it with the milk or the cream and the coffee and see how you feel. But it's listen to your body and not to, just throw out the baby with the bathwater and say never listen to a doctor, but listen to your body. Tell your body it can heal. A doctor, traditional medical doctor, would not ever discuss healing because they don't want to be liable if you're not if you don't heal. Okay, but also their training says that if you don't use their methods, they don't, like you say, they don't know other methods. They know their methods and they believe in their methods, and so they're going to promote their methods and poo-poo anything that you might say, well, like my grandmother used to give me this, or oh, that's old fashioned, that's old wives' tale. Oh, don't mess with that.
Welcome to the Insightful Journal, where we deal with issues that affect health disparities here in America, which are some of the most egregious problems that we face. Today, we have a very special guest, my friend and colleague, Dr. Virginia Kane, the current president of the National Medical Association and also the Commissioner of Health for the city of Indianapolis, Indiana. Welcome, Dr. Kane, and it's wonderful to have you here. Let's start off right away, which I'm trying to get some of these questions answered. And I'm going to divide it up into a couple parts because there's a lot of stuff that we're going to discuss. Let's start off with the National Medical Association.
Well, first, let me just say thank you, and I'm honored to be on your show. For a former health officer and someone who's done an incredible job in the past, I just look forward to the dialogue.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Kane. We've been very busy, and a lot of our colleagues in public health has been on. In fact, Dr. Su said to give you his regards. I talked with him earlier today. And we've got some very interesting issues that we have to deal with here in public health. I know that you are the incoming president of the National Medical Association. Can you tell me a little bit about what your plans are in terms of the National Medical Association this year, and what are you going to be focusing on?
So first, let me just say, for those viewers out there who may not know who the National Medical Association is, we've been around since 1895. We're the largest Black physician group in the country. But more important than that, we were the first ones with Lyndon B. Johnson in order to advocate for Medicaid and Medicare. We were the only medical association to do that. And our president was on Air Force One with Lyndon B. Johnson, and we were standing right behind him in the White House when that significant signature that changed the landscape of how healthcare is done in this country happened. So I just want to tell you about our strong advocacy that we do on behalf of our patients in the healthcare system. So in terms of my platform, for those who may not know, I am not only the director and chief medical officer for the Marion County Public Health Department in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm an associate professor of medicine in the Division of Infectious Diseases at Indiana University School of Medicine, and I practice out of the fifth largest public health hospital in the country called Ashkenazi Health. And so I think when we look at what our possible concerns may be with the incoming administration and Congress, we have to realize that the number one issue that's so critical for us to be healthy is to have access to insurance. And so we have about 25 states that have Medicaid expansion, but other states did not have that happen during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we want to assure ourselves to make sure that in those states that have Medicaid expansion, we don't want to eliminate that. So many of our vulnerable populations, disadvantaged populations, if they don't have insurance, it's one of the greatest barriers to accessing health care. And we've got our work cut out for us. And our work cut out for us is we need to go to those other states that did not have Medicaid expansion to strongly advocate for that so that people can have insurance in order to get the care that they need.
That's very important. And as you know, that's the main topic in the news these days about healthcare and about United Healthcare and about these agencies which are supposed to be providing healthcare to individuals. And these individuals, many times they have what's called the Medicaid managed plan. And so these individuals are on welfare or get state assistance. It comes through the states. For these programs. I know that I have quite a few of my patients, who are on those programs, and it's very important that we offer this level of care. So you know that I've been an advocate of doing away with all of this. I think we should have a single payer, universal health care plan, but we aren't there yet. But I'm still hopeful that we're going to get there like every other major industrialized country in the world. But for the time being, we have to deal with what we have, Well,
let me tell you what you don't know, okay? And this is where the female is the superior species against you. I'm just going to be honest and let you know that now.
Okay.
So the average life expectancy for a Black male is 68 years of age. 68. And we retire with Social Security at age, you can start at 62, but the average age is 65. So you can work all your life, but you may only benefit from your Social Security dollars just 3 years, Larry, 3 years, dying at the average of 68 years of age. Now, Black females, we live a little bit longer. We're close to 72 years of age. But this is critical, and I say that because Medicare kicks in once you're 65 and older. That's the best reimbursement, and that's the best benefits that you can get. Now, Medicaid is for the clients who are lower income, in the poverty range, okay? And the reimbursements are not as great for the Medicaid population as it is for Medicare. But we primarily see Medicaid if you're pregnant, having children, or it's for children for Medicaid. And it's also for individuals who may have special disabilities, or they may be immunocompromised, like they may have kidney failure or some of those items. But it's not for everybody under the age of 65. So I would love to see if we could lower the Medicaid age from 65 down to 50 years of age, where we see a significant impact, I believe, in improving my health outcome if we were able to do that. So now that's just one of my major platforms that the NMA is going to be looking at. But let me tell you about my other 3 to 4 that I think are just as critical. So we know that heart disease is the number one killer in this country. Number one killer for people of color, no matter what your race, is the number one killer. Cancer is the number two killer. So if I could address the number one killer, heart disease, that could be huge in saving a lot of lives. And we've got some newer medications that are out there that are these, what they're called, these weight losing medications that we've been traditionally using to treat patients with diabetes. We have now found that people can lose 15, 20 pounds by being on this treatment for diabetes. But we now know you can use the same medication for treatment for obesity. And studies have shown, primarily in Europe, though, have shown that if you're on these weight losing medications, you can reduce myocardial infarctions. That's a heart attack for you layman folks. You can reduce heart attacks by nearly 30%, 28%. So if I could prevent a third of the heart attacks by being on this treatment for obesity, that's huge.
That's huge.
And we do see a decrease in strokes by about 7%.
That's very interesting.
So that's, yes. So, but we need to have Congress approve. There's an obesity treatment act that we know that any federal employee has access to this medication. Okay. And we know the veterans have access to this medication. But we love to figure out how we can get it on the formulary for Medicaid and Medicare, so that those people who are lower income or have lack of insurance might be able to obtain these medications at hardly no cost. Now, the tragic news is, we've all heard about what happened in Madison, Wisconsin, just yesterday, just heartbreaking, where a young 15-year-old student, it appears, may have killed a teacher and some other students and then killed herself. She's believed to be the suspect, this 15-year-old individual. And so we've got to figure out violence prevention, really targeting our teenagers, our young adults, where we don't want to have accidental deaths, okay? We don't want to have anyone having access under the age of 18 to a loaded gun and not be responsible. We've got gun lots, we've got storage boxes. And so, but it also appears that sometimes people, and I don't know, I don't have any clue what the situation was in this case, but that person must have been driven and must have been under a lot of stress or whatever to do something of that nature and take their life. That was like, you're concerned that this might have been suicide as part of this event that happened. And so we're going to have to wait until the investigation is over. But we hear a lot of instances where parents or adults in the home don't believe that their children or anybody can access a loaded gun, and because of maybe bullying or just for whatever reason, stress, and maybe related to homework, or they could have broken up in a relationship, feel the need that they have to bring a loaded weapon into a school setting or any place where it can cause harm to others or to themselves. Now,
Well,
you and I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Kane, we're having that same problem in Philadelphia. This last week, well, we had a rash of shootings and deaths. and a lot of them involved teenagers. So this is a nationwide problem. It's certainly a problem of all of the major cities. And if you remember, going back, we have declared that violence is a public health issue. And it's certainly an issue that we can address in terms of mental health, in terms of laws and so forth. It's not just a criminal justice issue. So you can hire more police, you can have more courts, but that's not getting to the root cause for this thing.
No, I really think it's so incredible. See, we're so computerized now. You got TikTok, you got all these different programs. So the exposure is at a much higher magnitude when they're facing stress or communications to an individual. And mental health, I don't care what anybody tells you, is the number one issue in a lot of communities. And some folks self-medicate themselves in order to handle their stress and may develop a substance use disorder. Okay, but we definitely desperately need more mental health counselors, but we also need our parents, our relatives, our colleagues to recognize when someone is under a significant amount of stress and we don't pay as much attention or we don't recognize the symptoms. So we need a broader base training and understanding and to understand those signals when someone may be in trouble.
I think you're absolutely correct, and I'll agree with you, wholeheartedly on that one. I can remember I was on the board of the American Association, Medical Association, and we had our convention. I think it was in Florida or somewhere, and the issue came up, about guns. So I was the only one there that had a different opinion on what was going on, because one of the things that it's indisputable. We just have too many guns. America's the only place. I think there's only two places in the world where you have a constitutional right to carry a firearm. Only two places. And of course, those two places have one of the highest murder rates and so forth and so on. So I'm not even sure if we can even tackle that issue at this point because there's just many guns.
Yeah, but there's some ways I think you can tackle it. Now, do you drive a car?
Yes,
have you ever driven a car?
Yes.
Now, did you have to pass the driver's test to be able to drive that car to get a driver's license?
Yes.
Right. So why is it when we buy a gun that we can't require at least a minimum of a 2-hour training for every gun that we buy, where they're taught about how if you leave a loaded gun inside a house, that these kids, oh my goodness, they're way smarter than when I was growing up. A 2 or 3-year-old can easily find a gun under a mattress or in the drawer next to you or even in the top of your closet. It's a piece of cake, even when they're 2 and 3 years of age. But we need to educate our parents about how smart their kids are and what kind of precautions they can take in order to store their guns properly so that they can't be used as a weapon for something that may be harmful to other people. And I think they should be required, if you're going to buy a gun, you should be required to buy this gun lock or storage box. Now, you may not use it, but I think you should be required to do it. Now, this is a personal opinion of mine. This is not the National Medical Association, but wouldn't it be wonderful that everybody had to see a little video showing what the unintended consequences are of having a loaded gun in your home? You may be grandparents and you don't think anything about it, and have your young kids coming over to your house and something like this happens. Because once you lose a child, I don't care what anybody says, it impacts you for life. All the siblings, family members, relatives, friends. That's a painful process to slowly overcome.
Yes, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'll agree with you on that one. Those issues.
Now I have two more things that are left I got to talk
Okay.
about now.
Okay, go ahead.
So the next one has to do with what I call precision medicine. And this is where if, for example, you got breast cancer, you know that more Black women have what they call the more invasive, more deadly breast cancer at a much higher rate than their white counterparts. And yet, if you do not undergo genetic testing, which can cost anywhere from $200 to $400, if you don't undergo that, then you just get the regular cocktail chemotherapy that a lot of white female patients get, but in a Black female may not be as effective. You're losing your hair possibly. You may get sick sometimes with nausea from the chemotherapy, and you may feel tired and exhausted, but you really want something where it's going to be a cure or so effective. And so, but if you can, based on your own genes that you have, and based on the particular cancer that you have, we know that certain medications work way better on those cancers.
Yes.
Works way better if you have a certain gene. But a lot of insurance companies won't pay for this. And so patients don't know, or they may not be able to afford to pay for that specific genetic testing, $200 to $400. Get it done. We need to have specific medications that are specific for us from a gene therapy. Now, there's a new products that are out there that may be life-saving and curative for sickle cell disease. It's called gene therapy. And there are two products that are out there. One of them, I think they may be pulling from the market because of side effects. And some of these products are not benign. We know that usually 1 out of 32 people who own gene therapy, they may die, okay? But think about if you got sickle cell disease, you may die at an early age as a young adult because of complications you may experience in the hospital, life-threatening, very painful. And so if you had the chance to cure yourself from sickle cell and you never have to worry about it, this may be something you might be interested in trying. You may say the odds are okay with me. One out of every 32 people on this treatment going to die. I may decide I want to take a chance and try this gene therapy and hope that I survive. As more people get on these treatments, I think we're going to see a cure for sickle cell in our lifetime without all of the very negative, life-threatening side effects that can be associated with this condition.
Thank you for watching the Insightful Journal with Dr. Lawrence Robinson. Please be sure to visit our website and YouTube channel for more insightful information and insightful entertainment. See you on the next episode of the Insightful Journal.